What was the dumbest thing you ever saw someone do with a corporate credit card? Buy approximately $65 of gas 4 times in 1 hour. He only had one company car but 3 personal cars at home. After an audit, he had been getting away with it for over a year. Had a friend who managed to spend $20K on her corporate card over the course of about a year and a half. Apparently she felt like she wasn't being compensated or treated well at her job, even though she actually was, and would go out and buy things on the card: dinner, gas, books, makeup, clothes, etc. After the fact she told me that, in the beginning, she'd been careful to buy things only at places she knew her boss and his partner, the only 2 other people who had cards on the account, would shop. Then she tossed all reason aside and would basically hijack the credit card bill every month and cut it up and reprint it without her purchases on there, like her boss or his accountant would never notice the discrepancy in dollar amounts. One day her boss called her into his office and she thought she was going to get a raise. Nope. Credit card statements all over the place. The ultimatum was, pay the money back within the week or be charged. She had to beg a relative for the money. The dumbest part was, even after all of that, she still didn't think she was the bad person in the situation. We stopped being friends shortly after that. A co-worker was dating someone that also worked for our company. He used his company card to buy an addition to the girl's friend's house. Something like a $20K addition. The accountants caught it and started digging around to figure out why we had bought so much wood, drywall, and other building materials. Finally someone got the idea to start driving around and looking at the employees' homes, and found the huge addition on the girlfriend's home. They were both fired for theft. The best part is that it wasn't even her house. It was a rental. Once she lost her job she couldn't afford the rent anymore, and got evicted. I'm sure the landlord was laughing his butt off at the whole thing. Got a nice free addition. I was bartending one night. It was a Thursday so karaoke was going on. Guy walked in a business suit, walked up to the bar and said, "As long as I'm here everything is on this card." I said, "Sure enough, what would you like to drink?" He said, "When I say everything I mean every drink, shot, and food for every person." He stayed until close and tallied up a huge tab. Tipped 50%. Come to find out he had been let go but the company forgot to take his credit card. I don't know whatever happened legally but I made close to 1K in tips that night. Back when I was in high school I took a cooking class. This is in a small town where the grocery store is only a stone's throw away from the high school and cooking students are often sent to the store to pick up ingredients. When a student would do this they would get a little card which they used to pay and they would have sign a little form at the till. Source: did this several times. So this one day the teacher asked this kid to go the store to get oats, 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 store to get oats. I wish I was kidding. For some reason, the fact that this is oats and not anything else just makes it so much funnier. There was an AskReddit for what did someone do to get fired on the first day. Dude went out on the corporate card and bought like 6 suits on his corporate card on his lunch break. I worked at a strip club back in the 90s and a customer ran up a $3,500 tab on his corporate Amex and left without closing it out. A few days later we got a visit from the police as he reported the card stolen. Thing is, he was a regular and we had plenty of video footage of him getting lap dances while wearing his corporate issued polo shirt. He not only got fired but was charged with filing a false police report which led to his wife divorcing him for being such a stripper loving idiot. Corporate issued polo shirt. No. Even if you weren't using the company card that's still a dumb idea. Guy bought a diamond ring for his wife. When it was brought up to him he said he was going to pay it off, except he never mentioned it to anyone until he was caught. Instead of firing him they took it out of his next 6 or more paychecks. Nice interest-free loan for him. I kinda did this with my wife's wedding ring. Boss okayed it. My business card gets points, which I am allowed to keep. So I purchased the ring online with the business card and immediately transferred a check for the same amount into the account. Our accountant was a little annoyed, but I essentially got a bunch of free Amazon bucks, since I was buying the ring anyway. I used to audit corporate card purchases for a Fortune 50 company. I caught a guy trying to buy a $30 K boat from Bass Pro and a $15 K walk-in humidor. We had a co-worker, may he rest in peace. He spent 13,000 euros in the strip club with the company card. He would have spent more if the bank hadn't blocked the card. I once ran an audit for a company who, through my audit, found out that an employee was using her manager's credit card to foot her personal purchases. Stuff on the receipt includes massive orders for protein bars, endless entries to PayPal, and even tickets for 2 to an NFL game. Thousands of dollars. Apparently no regret was shown as she was getting canned. So stupid. I don't know that this is dumb since it was legit, but it's still shocking to me. I was at a conference with the big partners from my firm and got invited out to dinner with them and a prospective client. There were about 8 of us in total at a nice steakhouse. I'm a wine fan, and I had a nice list. Partner indicated that my counterpart with client also liked wine and that we should order a few bottles. Partners and CEO were drinking scotch. When we got the tab it was $17,000. I was of course the only one surprised by this. It was worth it too since we probably billed the client that within the first week, but dang. A co-worker and I took a bunch of clients to dinner one year, like 25 of us. The clients started drinking Irish car bombs which turned out to be crazy expensive. Dinner was something like $700. Bar bill was around $4,000. We hadn't been given an upper limit for the trip so we didn't get in too much trouble, but we were told we would definitely not do that again. A few years back it came to light that my mother, the head accountant at a mid-sized company, had been using company cards and creative accounting for nearly a decade to the tune of at least $100K. They stopped investigating when they hit that number because it was enough to pass the threshold for the maximum felony penalty, 25 years. We became aware of her crimes when she went missing and ended up attempting suicide the night before her arraignment. Her suicide attempt was unsuccessful, but she finally went through with it a little more than a year later on the night before she was set to begin serving her sentence. The whole thing has upended my life. My grandmother embezzled nearly $250,000 from the company she worked for, and then successfully shot herself in the head on the day they found out. Had an employee buy a used car with it. Had an employee pay a court-ordered penalty with it. Had an employee draw down cash to buy drugs with it. Alcohol, prostitutes. 20 years in people management. I've seen it all. Guy was overseas on a business trip in Eastern Europe and in an establishment he shouldn't have been in, decided to buy a round of drinks figuring no one would know from the name of the place what it was. Unfortunately later he was enjoying the pleasures of a lady that worked in the establishment, and having run out of cash, forgotten he had used his work card to buy the drinks when agreeing to specific services being offered by the employee, and was then surprised to be questioned by the FD a month later on why a restaurant he had bought drinks in was also charging him a €50 supplement for anal. Ananas. It should read ananas, the French for pineapple. Very expensive. Pineapple in Eastern Europe. Worked at a retail company that gave all of its store managers corporate cards. The cards had higher limits on them so the store managers could use that instead of maintaining petty cash on hand or having to use personal cards while traveling for training. While visiting one of the stores I asked where their Keurig machine was. I wanted a coffee and the closest Starbucks was a few blocks away. I had seen the manager submit her expense report with a purchase for a Keurig machine, K-cups, a small bathroom fixture and a few other things. The assistant manager says we don't have a Keurig machine. After looking into it further, turns out the manager had been using the card to buy several personal items over the last few years. He ended up repaying a little over $20K in purchases. They caught Ted Bundy for driving erratically, so I'm not surprised this person got caught with the smoking Keurig. When working away, while not officially authorized, but never queried, it was generally accepted the manager that would take the workers out for a couple of drinks at the end of whatever we were doing. Not a full pee-up but a round or two at the nearest bar to where we were staying. Manager had been out most of the day with another boss drinking when we finished work late in the afternoon. We went to the bar to have a few beers and something to eat at the hotel we were staying at. It's okay, I'll get this one. About 5 rounds later we were all like, are you sure this is fine? Yara Shifts KII. I'm a decent drinker, but even I was rat-assed at the end of the night. Wake up around 10 am and go down for food. Apparently the majority of the booze drank that night went on the card. We officially didn't get in trouble, but now you can only use the company card for sanctioned work events. It only takes one night to frick up an arrangement that's been in place for years. Not quite a corporate credit card, but in the same vein. Many years ago, when I was in college, our student government had a retreat near the start of the year. The college agreed to reimburse for food, so they submitted their receipts, including their liquor store receipt. Not only will the college not pay for alcohol, drinking was forbidden at school-sponsored events. Apparently this fact was made abundantly clear to the student government. The entire government had to resign and new elections were held. Dude tried to pass off a $350 spa package as a gift for a client. Problem is we have no clients based near us, the closest being some 2,000 miles away. Not me personally, but my roommate went to a networking thing out of state paid for by the company. All the salesmen have corporate cards for taking out clients and such. The second night there they all head to the strip club. One of the new guys charged about $500 on his card at the club. He reported it stolen after the trip, and as far as I've heard nothing came of it. You can play this card once, maybe. The balls. Guy lived across the country and commuted at the beginning and end of every week. For the first few months, any of his flight or lodging expenses could be covered by the company, per his contract. After that time expired, he was expected to have either moved here permanently or start covering his own transportation and hotels if he chose to keep commuting every week. He simply never stopped charging his company card for it. He tried to get clever with it too. Would route his flights through other cities and pretend he was conducting business there, so they were technically supposed to be covered by the company, and would lose hotel receipts thinking it would be impossible to prove that the hotels he was staying in were local to us. After nearly a year of catching these things and having to make him write the company a personal check every month, they finally fired him. I just wonder why this guy took the job if he didn't want to move and they weren't going to permanently reimburse him for commuting. When the army first went to a travel card system, they initially used Amex. The cards had no limit and were activated at all times. One of my soldiers went out and bought a set of rims for his personal vehicle to the tune of $2,500. Now, there are limits and the cards are deactivated until needed. One of my soldiers went out and bought a set of rims for his personal vehicle to the tune of $2,500. Lame guess, he owned a Honda Civic. Invited their landlord out to a night on the town, in lieu of rent payment, and told the company it was for a sales lead, so they charged the dinner and drinks to the company card. Basically free rent. During the 2008 recession, the president of the company took a pay cut, so he just started putting everything on his company card. All the gas for his family's cars, dinners for his daughter's volleyball team, TV for his son's apartment, on and on. No real attempt to hide any of it. The accounting department started complaining about it. He told them to just put it in. Finally the head accountant just said no, she couldn't sign her name to this stuff anymore. President of the company fired her on the spot, even calling the police to help escort her out of the building, telling them he suspected her of embezzling but couldn't prove it, but he feared for his safety. A year later the scumbag golden parachuted out of the company. The company barely survived. This pisses me off to no end. I used to review credit card purchases. Employees would have to submit receipts and explain what each line item was for. One guy bought a $500 watch and wrote down on his spreadsheet "watch to replace my broken one." Apparently he felt his personal wristwatch was work related and worthy of replacing with Swiss watch with automatic movement. Ugh. I dated a girl that would try to expense mani pedis cause she was in sales and she had to look nice. She just couldn't believe that this wasn't covered by the policy. As a CPA, I had to roll my eyes. Using the company card to buy gas for a company car that was on a paid fuel card separate from the company credit card, and then also expensing the receipts for both the credit card fuel bill and the driven mileage. This just seems like a headache to begin with. I'm horrified to even have my corporate card in my wallet, but I did show it to a cashier to get a student discount. He asked if I had a student ID, so I flashed my university corporate credit card and he believed it. Little different, but my former co-worker didn't have a corporate card, so he expensed and was reimbursed for a parking ticket because there was no legal parking in Philly. A few years ago, my boss, at the time, sent me with the company card to buy him a calculator. I asked no questions and promptly returned with said device, only to watch him open up Microsoft Excel and finally be able to finish his totals column. This is one of my favorites on the thread, not a misuse or abuse of the company card, but a different kind of dumb use of the card. One of my ex-employees spent around $1,200 in 1 month at the pot dispensary. I still can't comprehend how he thought he was going to get away with it. Late 90s, the superintendent of my local school district used a district credit card to buy about $300 worth of dinners and booze for school board members during a business trip in New York. Got charged with theft because of the alcohol purchases, even though he reimbursed the district when he did his expense report. After a lot of investigating and court time, the superintendent was fined $100 and had to resign. He then had to settle for becoming the superintendent of the Houston Independent School District, the 7th largest district in the nation. That'll learn him. Our local school super does this about once a week. Treasurer is his best friend, and they go on professional development trips all of the time. It was brought out via records request, given to the local paper, but no one will print it. A small town. Sister used to work at a company that gave people like her company cards. She used to tell the story of how the cards got limited to about $1,000. They used to be closer to $5,000. A previous sales rep, who worked there years before, went to a major Vegas medical convention. His plan was to woo every big client he could. After his first night, he had all but maxed out his card. He spent the money at a casino, a fancy steakhouse, and of course, lots of clubs. The boss got word and was pissed. The guy had to use his own credit card for the rest of the weekend. Afterwards, we walked into work Monday morning to get chewed out. As we walks in, he finds out that his boss got called by someone who ended up becoming a major client. Oddly enough, it wasn't one of the guys he took out for drinks. It was a guy he met on his last day. He had bought him a coffee. The sales rep got chewed out, obviously, but he got a decent bonus for the sale, and the credit card policy changed cause of him. My first job out of college was at the famous Bell Labs. It was absolutely the pinnacle of R&D labs in its day, and to have a job there was a first class ticket on the success train. I was one of 2 newbies on my manager's team. The other was, in my estimation, completely unqualified. Bell Labs was making a big effort to recruit women, and, with this particular candidate, maybe too much of an effort. We were both ceremoniously handed our AT&T corporate credit cards and were given very careful instructions about what it could and couldn't be used for. Next Monday, I got to work and Shauna was nowhere to be found. A security guard arrived mid-morning and picked up the 1 or 2 things she had left on her desk. Later that day, we were reminded about credit card use policy, but I didn't hear the whole story for another couple of weeks. It seems Shauna decided that corporate credit card meant I'm buy whatever I've always wanted. Her first stop after getting the card was to buy a $10 K fur coat. She went on quite a buying spree before Amex got suspicious and shut her down. This was the 80s, and processes were manual back then. Needless to say, my boss was pretty pissed off. Shauna never stepped foot on the premises again. A buddy of mine found out that his parents had this corporate credit card in 5th grade with basically unlimited money. He managed to spend about $20,000 on online games such as RuneScape and Habbo before his mother found out. You can imagine he was the coolest kid in class. I accidentally pocket bought my friend's erotica novel off Amazon because yay one-click ordering. I've never been so glad that they're reasonable about returns for accidental digital purchases, because I did not want to explain to our purchasing officer why our department bought a book of Vampire P. Lesson learned: always log out of your work Amazon account. Similar story here. I ordered some swag for using my corporate card on my Amazon account. For whatever reason, Amazon decided to make that my default card. Later I ordered condoms on Amazon without realizing the corporate card was set. Had to reimburse my office. Hopefully nobody actually looked at the digital receipt. I knew a guy with a coworker who used his corporate CC to pay someone overseas to do his work for him. He collected his paycheck and expensed the contractor doing his work for about a year before terminated. Or maybe it was the smartest thing done with a corp card. IDK. Old company I worked for. Give guy corporate card to go buy groceries for the home he was working at. 3 hours later didn't come back or return calls. My boss looked at the account to see if there was any action on it. Lo and behold, a $600 charge for it at Best Buy. Safe to say dude thoroughly stepped in it and was not answering his phone but did respond to a text that basically said frick you, I quit the next morning. He was also thoroughly disappointed when he came to get his last check and realized it was about $30 bucks. And if he returns the TV, the money is automatically refunded to the card it was bought with. Paid $1,000 for a several-year-old 32-inch LCD TV. I was the resident manager at a hotel and one sold-out weekend the business center TV died. I offered to run down to my apartment and grab my LCD TV to get us through the event. After the weekend was over, the owner of the hotel was grateful I took the initiative on my own. He told me I could either get a replacement TV for the business center, or give the hotel my old TV and buy a new one for myself. Told me to just keep it under $1,000 and sent me on my way with his card. Pretty big jump from a 32 to a 52 in a cramped 1-bedroom apartment, lol. A guy I worked with went down a dark road, like leaving Las Vegas dark. HR maxed it in a month on booze and electronics. A trip was in there too. Lost his job and moved to Arizona. Whoa, that really did end on a dark note. NSFL. About 5 years ago, it was my department's turn to get the suite at an NBA game for a team my company sponsors. A new guy who was a Nepotism hire took it upon himself to keep ordering drinks and food for everyone in the suite. About 15 people. We thought it was a nice, albeit ridiculously over-the-top gesture, but we just figured he wanted to make a good impression and suspected he came from money. The next day, our executive stormed onto our floor and had a closed-door meeting with him. And our entire department never got the suite again. That guy later turned out to be blowing the VP who hired him, who was also a guy, and married with 4 kids. That took a very Shonda Rhimes turn at the end. Give it to a stripper before passing out. They swiped as many times as possible before leaving. He, allegedly, paid the $10K out of pocket so he wouldn't be discovered. That seems like criminal fraud on the part of the strip club. I rented a Lamborghini with mine, but I did not expense it to the company, so it's fine, as long as I paid the bill by end of month, which I did. I just wanted to cross that off my bucket list, and I don't have any credit cards of my own, so I took the opportunity. My old boss took me and a few co-workers out for a few drinks to celebrate my last day. Dropped about $5,000 on the entire night, about half of that at the strip club. I had a boss who had a quick meeting with somebody in Sydney, Australia. Naturally he wanted to fly first class. Well, he couldn't be without his wife, so she came, too. And his kids? Sure, let's throw them on the bill. Well, they couldn't possibly sleep anywhere nasty, so they got 2 suites in a 5-star hotel. Lunch and dinner every day for 4 people, plus entertainment, all on the company dime. For that 1 2-hour meeting, he and his family spent 3 weeks on a luxury holiday in Australia. Now, it has been many years, but I believe the flight bill itself came to $35,000. Hotel was $30,000. Dinners, show, entertainment, amusements parks. Sure, why not? Fancy wines were an equally large sum. In the end, seeing as this was a small company, 3 people were made redundant because this guy drained the pot. He was fired. He quickly came back as a contractor. He's the CEO, after all, so his punishment for ruining the lives of 3 people and costing the company, like, $100K was that his family got a nice holiday, and I guess he had to follow some different tax laws or something. Must be nice to be the CEO. Huh, and I've just checked on the company. They've recovered. They're doing booming business and he's gone. We hired this new guy at the office who I had worked with off-site for a while. A few days after he was hired, I noticed I hadn't seen him around, so I asked the VP of the company. It was a small company, maybe 30 employees at the time, where he was. She proceeds to tell me that this idiot swiped a corporate credit card off of someone's desk his first day on the job and then proceeds into his office where he signs up for a P site and starts downloading P like a madman. This would have been late 90s, early zeros. All of this was discovered in a matter of hours and he was let go before lunch. The best part? He shows back up at the office a few days later with his pastor and tries to convince the company that he is a godly man and that this was just a momentary lapse of faith on his part and that they should rehire him. It didn't go as planned. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.